Andrew McCart, IFLTV, delighted. As always, I keep saying it, but I am delighted to be joined by Mr. Dan Rafael. Dan, wow, what a sort of last 4 or 5 days in the boxing world. Every time we do an interview, I keep saying that the sport is crazy. We don't know what's around the corner. But first
I
and
have to say,
foremost,
the last week feels like about 6 months in like 3 days.
it certainly does. And but people don't know if people have been living under a rock and don't know what we're talking about. I'm just going to jump straight into the deep end here. Let's just do it. Conor Benn signing with ZUFFA and Dana White. Now we saw the back and forth with Eddie and Dana and what Eddie's done for Conor in the last 2 3 years. It just seemed like this was so left field, as you Americans say, or right field, whatever the phrase is.
Left
That
field, but okay.
left field. It just seemed like that would never happen. But I could, like we keep saying, the sport keeps delivering crazy, crazy news stories nearly each and every time. We did not see this coming. When you saw the Twitter post or you saw the Instagram post, wherever you saw the news, what was your initial reaction?
Well, there's been a lot of stories that I've covered in the time I've covered boxing, and I have to tell you, very rarely is there something that's really that shocking to me. Like, whatever it is, it's not totally a shocker because stuff happens. But there's a few that you kind of really catch you where you just like you're whoa, that's out of nowhere. And this was one of those. This was one of those deals where you're like, okay, that's sort of like you said, out of left field. Now, what was not shocking to me is that Zuffa would be out there flexing their financial muscle and their ability to have a quality platform in America where they're going to maybe come up with some major signings. That I've been expecting. Did I have Conor Benn on my bingo card? No, that was not on my bingo card. So that part of it, the athlete that they did sign was a surprise to me. The fact that they signed a high profile fighter was not a surprise. So that's one of those things where it was a surprise maybe now, but anybody that's going to be surprised going forward is just not in reality because they're going to sign other top names and fighters that become available either because other promoters have contracts run out or they don't re-sign them because they're having their own issues as far as a platform on which to have their events, so they don't have that revenue coming in. Look, Zuffa is just getting started. I mean, I've said this from the moment that they announced their plans, that anybody that looks at their entry into boxing and think it's not real or not legit or not for the long term, the way some other people have tried to come in out of nowhere, they don't know what they're talking about because these are well-financed people. These are people with experience in combat sports. They're people with a group of folks that work with them that are extremely intelligent, that know the sport and the landscape. And so, underestimate them at your own peril. But Conor Benn coming to them, that's a big deal. Now, they didn't announce this part of it. My reporting is it's a one-fight deal with no strings attached, no options, no matching rights. $15 million going to take place by the end of May, going to be in the UK. No specific opponent specified at this point, but I don't expect it to be, a huge, like a unification, not unification, but a big world championship fight or something along those lines. But if things go well, why wouldn't they want to try to stay with him and vice versa? So they're here to be disruptors and do it and pick their spots. And they've done their job by catching a lot of people by surprise here.
I tell you what, they caught everybody surprised in Nottingham. It was like a wake in that fighters hotel. It was like
Why?
I don't know. I just felt the news just was so shocking that it
Well,
was one of
awake
them.
means it's like sad. Why is this sad? Like
No,
a funeral.
I suppose it was quiet and nobody was really discussing anything. It was kind of like that. It was like, what the heck? It's just everyone was in shock and it was just everyone was just on their phones and it was a weird feeling. And as you can imagine, we were all texting Eddie trying to get that first interview and
Sure.
whatnot. Um, but you said there, you report. I saw you report it, and I think Adam Carroll in Talksport said that as well. Mentioned you there on his show on Talksport, saying that you reported a one fight deal, no add-ons for 15 million. Seems a lot of money
It is a
for
lot of money.
a lot of money for just a one fight with no sort of nothing at the back end of it. No sort of. It just seems like once this fight done, you take your 15 million and then you can go your own way again. Why would Sufa do that? I mean, you said they were smart men, they're smart businessmen. They've been in combat sports a long time and they're well financed. We know that, but it seems quite a lot of money for just a one fight deal and nothing on the back end of it.
Well, first of all, a one fight deal doesn't mean it's only going to be one fight because, as I said, if the experience that they have working with Conor and his team, and Conor and his team have a positive experience working with Zuffa, I see no reason why they wouldn't want to perhaps try to stay together, number one. Number two, it is very clear that ZUFFA is trying to make an entree into British boxing, and what better way to do it than with one of the biggest stars in British boxing, and that's Conor Benn, among a few others. So that's part of it, I am sure. Also, ZUFFA boxing is largely financed by the Saudis, by Turkey Al Sheikh. They're the partner in this, so they've got money, and they've been spending it on big time names and big time fights over the last couple of years. I mean, they're the ones that financed Tyson Fury against Usyk, and they've done Joshua fights, and they've done Canelo fights, and any number of major events. So for them, relative to those gigantic expenditures, 15 million is like couch cushion money to them. For those in the business that operate where they look at their bottom line and try to make sure they put on an event where their expenses are less than their what their revenue is going to be, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But clearly, I say this because I have respect for the folks that run ZUFFA and that know what they're doing, that there has to be a method to the madness. This is not one of those things where they just said arbitrarily, hey, let's go give Conor Benn 15 mil just to put on a fight. I'm sure that this is part of a longer range plan. I'm sure part of that is to, become known in the UK where they have great boxing fans. And I'm sure that is part of it.
Dan, I don't know. For me, when I look at it, right, I know ZUFFA won that one belt, one champion. We've seen the ZUFFA belt. I think Turkey Al Sheikh had put a post up with the ZUFFA belt. But for me, when I look at Jai Apataya, which is a huge signing for ZUFFA boxing, he wanted to be undisputed. He wanted all 4 belts. He wanted every single one of them. Then Conor Benn, not so long ago, maybe 3-4 months ago, said that he wants that WBC belt because it's a legacy belt for him because his dad held the WBC title as well. Now, where does that fit in with ZUFFA, though? Will they allow these two fighters, because I know they want to get rid of the sanctioning bodies, but will they allow these two fighters fight for those belts? Because they've mentioned it a long time ago, haven't they, the pair of them?
Well, it's one thing for them to claim that they want to get rid of the sanctioning bodies, and that may be their long-range plans, and maybe that's what ultimately either they'll do their best efforts to get rid of them, which I don't think they'll get rid of them because there's going to be plenty of other people within the business that still operate with them. But if their long-term goal is to not do business with them at all, that can happen, I suppose. But it's not like you can just snap your fingers and change the paradigm of the sport in one day. So for the time being, it seems to me, and I don't say this with inside knowledge, but just reading the tea leaves and sort of knowing the players, at least for a period of time, if you want to sign big name talent who have belts already or have aspirations to win those belts, like a Conor Benn in terms of a Opataya, he already has the IBF title. He's the Ring Magazine champion. That a part of those deals, they're allowed to compete for those other belts. But what the caveat to that is they won't do those types of fights, I don't believe, on a ZUFFA branded card. So if Jai Opataya, who's going to defend his title, but it's not being promoted as an IBF title fight, but he's the ring champion. If you look at any of their promotional materials, it just says the Cruiserweight World Championship. That'll be on a ZUFFA card. But he also will have the ability, I believe, as well as a Conor Benn, if it comes to that, to compete on a Riyadh season card, to compete on a Ring Magazine card, where they do fights involving the sanctioning bodies. Remember, the through thing here is Turkey. He does the ring cards. He's involved with the Riyadh season cards. He obviously is involved heavily in terms of the financing of ZUFFA boxing. And so they'll work together, I believe. And so if Conor Benn does a ZUFFA branded event in the UK in the spring, it's not going to be a world championship fight, just going to be a fight. But if eventually he does fight for a world title, I would imagine that would wind up on a Ring Magazine card or a Riyadh season type card. So there are ways around it for the time being, it seems to me. I can guarantee you that Jai Opataya did not come with Tasman Fighters, his Australian promoter, and make this deal. And they've told me this. This is not even like a secret. They told me, I asked the question of his people at Tasman Fighters. They said, no, part of his agreement to go to be involved with ZUFFA boxing is that he's allowed to maintain his world title and pursue unification fights, which is his dream and his goal. And look, the ZUFFA people, they're not stupid. They're not going to cut themselves off from the top talent in the sport just because the person has a belt or wants to win a belt. It's going to be a work in progress how they go through and basically get to a point where they're not doing those fights with titles. Now, remember also, the Ring Magazine is owned by Turkey. So the more Ring Magazine champions they get in the fold, they can then control what a lot of people perceive as like the quote unquote the real title, the lineal title, which is the ring belt. So, you know, you always got to don't think about what's happening right in front of you. Think about 4 or 5 steps in the future. That's what they're doing.
That's probably what Eddie should have done then, because Conor wasn't under contract. I think Eddie probably admits this himself. I think he did admit this. He said maybe he should have, he misjudged the character. Maybe he should have got a contract for Conor. But when you look at that situation with the relationship that he had with Conor, with Eddie standing at the top of that hill, taking bullets for Conor the last 2, 3 years, and then not signing to a contract, he believed he didn't need to give
Well,
Conor a contract, and then obviously Zuffa came in and did what they did. So again, where do you sit on that? Do you blame
look,
Conor, or
Zuffa.
do you think he done it the wrong way? Should there have been a courtesy of a phone call? Where do you sit?
All right, so there's a lot to unpack right there. Zuffa didn't do anything wrong. They
Mhm.
have a free agent athlete that anybody could have talked to. Could have been Zuffa talking to him. Could have been anybody else. Could have been Frank Warren talking to him. Could have been PBC, whoever. Anybody could have rung up Team Conor Benn and said, "Look, we understand you're a free agent. Are you a free agent?" That's always the first question. You don't want to step on anybody's agreements, and he was clearly a free agent. Eddie doesn't even deny that. He's not trying to say that they were infringing on his agreement. So they didn't do anything wrong. That's the business. You know, you go after the best talent or the highest profile talent that's a star. And in terms of Eddie saying maybe he should have had a contract, yeah, maybe it's a little bit of naivete. Maybe he was sort of lulled into the idea that, you know, we're good friends and we don't need a contract. You know, to me, you do need a contract. I don't care how close you are. Now, maybe that wasn't always the case through the history of the sport. I mean, people like to cite the classic example that Bob Arum will still talk about today. Bob Arum worked with Marvin Hagler for many, many years on a handshake, and that's rare. But in today's business, especially with what's going on with competitors, you have to make sure your paperwork is locked in. Now, just because his contract expired didn't necessarily mean that Conor would have re-signed with Eddie. They knew there was other opportunities out there. So to make a long story short, I don't think that Conor did anything wrong by accepting the deal with Zuffa. I don't think that Zuffa did anything wrong by going after him. I don't think Eddie did anything wrong by, you know, being upset that he doesn't still have him. That's an understandable emotion. The only thing I would say about how it unfolded is, in my life, the way I would have handled it is if I had this amazing offer from Zuffa. Remember, Eddie had the opportunity to match it. I think that was part of what he was saying, and he didn't, wasn't able to because it was obviously a tremendous amount of money. Is you do pick up the phone and you call Eddie, or even you see him in person, or whatever the case may be. And you say, "Listen, I appreciate everything you've done for me. I know the struggles. I know that you really, went out of your way to help me. You loaned me money when I was down and out when the court case was going on because I had the bills piling up, and I truly appreciate that, as does my family. But I have this offer here for a crazy amount of money to go do a fight with these folks at ZUFFA. Maybe you want to be part of my team and I can pay you some of the money," which is what they claimed that they offered Eddie. He turned it down, apparently. And if he's really your friend, he says, "You know what? Thank you for the call. Go do what's best for yourself and your family." If you really are friends with somebody, you want them to be successful, but you want them to do what's best for Conor and for his family. So to get it in an email from a lawyer and not a phone call, I understand where Eddie's coming from. That's not the best way to handle things. The best way would be to be a man, pick up the phone, meet him in person, tell him what's up, explain it to him, and still tell him, "I'm taking this deal." At least then nobody can say you try to do anything behind your back and you're forthright about it. That's how I would have handled it. You can't be afraid to say something to somebody's face that you're going to do behind their back. So I have no problem with Conor taking the deal. I have no problem with Zuffa pursuing it. I got no problem with Eddie being, upset about it. The best way, though, would have been for them to have a conversation before it became official and handle it that way. That would have taken the sting out of it, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose that's what Eddie had said in the interview as well. That when we spoke to him, like he did say that, man, just pick up the phone, man. I asked for the phone call. They said no.
But
So
I don't view it as disloyal because this is business. Okay, at the end of the day, you got one career. It's a limited career, and you go out there and you make as much money as possible. And I've seen, and I'm not saying this about Eddie Hearn in specific, but I'm talking about just promotional outfits in general. We've seen the shoe on the other foot where maybe they're unhappy with the performance of a boxer, or something happens and they'll cut the guy right away, and or they'll maybe have a victory, but it's maybe not the best performance, and they want to cut the money. So I mean, it's a two-way street.
Mhm. Yeah.
Basically in boxing, sometimes it's I'm gonna fuck you before you fuck me.
Well, like I said, I've only been in the sport. I've definitely not been in the sport as long as you, Dan, but I've seen that many a times, and you've probably seen it way more than what the way how I've seen it. Um, Last interview we did, I mentioned the Eddie Hearn and Dana White beef, and I said it'll be fun, and you said I don't care. I care more about the fighters.
Sure.
However, it does seem though that this sort of feud or beef or whatever you want to call it between Dana White and Eddie Hearn is going to be on for a wee while, and we're going to get these little clips and these interviews of both of them going back and forth. Eddie basically told in my interview with Eddie last week, like Dana White was up his arse a couple of weeks ago, which means that Dana White was praising him and all this sort of stuff, and then obviously Dana White at the end of the UFC show in Texas there basically called Eddie a pussy. Have you never ever met a bigger pussy than Eddie Hearn? So it does seem like forever, as much as you probably don't like it or aren't bothered by it, it seems like this feud is going to be there between promoters and Dana White, and it's going to be, for me, it's going to be a fun ride. I don't know how it's going to. How do you see it?
I mean, I look. It's not just going to be between Eddie Hearn and Dana. It's you've seen Dana on the attack against Oscar De La
Oscar,
Hoya
yeah.
and Oscar on the attack against Dana White. I mean, it's going to be a never-ending thing. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really make a difference in terms of when the fights happen. I mean, it maybe will impact what fights are made because of who's with which companies. But if they really want to settle, let Eddie Hearn and Dana White. They're about the same age. Let them get in the ring and do the octagon or wherever, and let them doof it out. I would watch that. But
Who wins in? No, no. Who wins in, Dan? Eddie Hearn 6'5", probably about 18. Well, I would say about maybe 240, maybe. And you got Dana White. What is 5'10", 5'11"? Must be about around about the same weight.
I mean, I'm not making a pick on a non-existent promoter fight. You're fucking crazy. But the reality is they are going to go after each other. Some people are going to love it because it's going to make for a good clip here or there on their social media and all that, and that's fine. Not my thing. I mean, I'll hear it, I'll see it, but I'm not. It's not germane to like what actually is happening in the sport. I mean, some people will be amused by it. Some people will enjoy the back and forth. And then the reality is, in many respects, Eddie and Dana are both viewed by a lot of people as like heel figures. They're viewed as quote unquote the bad guys. So who do you root for when it's two bad guys fighting each other? I'm not saying they're bad guys. I'm just saying that's sort of like the perspective of how do it's if you're watching like wrestling and it's heel versus heel, who do you root for?
I suppose it might just be a UK versus US thing. All the
That could
UK,
be.
I mean, I might just have to go down that route. Yeah, like I said, it's going to be a fun ride. I mean, the news when it broke was exciting because I think in our line of work, we like when a news story like that, as big as that, breaks out. But we got another big story at the weekend, and I hope it wasn't lost, was Ryan Garcia becoming WBC world champion against Mario Barrios. Great win for Ryan. He looked a lot sharper and better than what he did against Rolly Romero in his last fight, his last outing. Your thoughts on the fight?
Well, like you said, he looked really, really good compared to the way he looked against Rolly Romero. But I thought that's the best he looked his whole career. I don't care which fight you want to pick. Go back to at whatever point he got to the level where he's fighting main event type fights, 12-round fights, the Luke Campbell fight and so forth. This was a focused and sharp and in shape Ryan Garcia. Seemed to be all good in terms of physically. Leading up to the fight, sounded good in terms of like where his head was at. And he went out there and he delivered against an opponent that was in good shape, but just lacked for the type of skills that Ryan has. Didn't have the kind of speed that Ryan has, and got hit with a lot of clean shots not because he's got no defense. Barrios actually has decent defense. He just didn't see the punches coming. The hand speed was so much greater. It was so evident from the opening seconds of the fight when he got hit with the right hand and went down. And as Ryan talked about in his post-fight interview, and I hadn't really thought about this, but he talked about how early in his career, his right hand was really his weapon. And then he had a bunch of injuries to the right hand, and so he really concentrated on making his left hand better, and that eventually became his calling card with the great left hook. But a lot of people kind of forgot that when he's right, he also has a great right hand too. And while I'm sure they practiced against both in training, I have to believe that their opinion was probably that the left hook is the big weapon. And so not only was he maybe a little taken aback by, not that he got hit with the right hand, but that it was not a typical right hand. As Barrios mentioned, it was sort of like a kind of a looping shot. that was maybe a little different angular wise than he may have expected, and it caught him. And so even though he went down, and I didn't think he was that hurt. I mean, he got right back up and it didn't seem to have any ill effects. The effect, though, was, oh, shit, now I got to worry about this other punch that, this looping right hand that I'm not really that all prepared for. So he took a bunch of those shots in the first half of the fight. And even though later on Ryan had said in his corner to his father, Henry, who's now the trainer, that the right hand was a little bit hurt, he was so far ahead on the cards at that point, and the left was still working, that he just cruised. I mean, it was, to me, I had it a shutout. I saw that, one judge gave Barrios the 11th round. The other judge gave Barrios the 11th and the 12th round. The third judge had it a shutout. I had it a shutout. I didn't see Barrios land one meaningful punch literally for 12 rounds. I thought it was an absolute cakewalk for Ryan Garcia. Even if he didn't fight as well the last few rounds compared to the first half of the fight, he still completely dominated. And look, I've been critical of Ryan Garcia quite a bit, but I'm man enough to say fucking kid did a great job. He won the fight. Now, that said, I'm going to wait to see what we see on the drug test screen that comes back after the fight. I think that's fair. But, congratulations to him. He won the WBC title, and he's going to make some major fights beyond this.
And he did mention Shakur.
He did mention Shakur. There's a lot of good fights out there for Ryan. Look, he was already a star that could command certain fights that he wanted. But now that he has the star power combined with the fact that he has a world championship, that's going to make it even a bigger thing as far as getting the kind of opponents he wants. So he's going to have the pick of the litter. Everybody's going to want to fight Ryan Garcia. So obviously Shakur was there ringside, and that would be a big fight. I'm skeptical that it happens because the first thing out of Shakur's mouth basically was, yeah, I'll fight him at 144. Ryan, we know, struggled dramatically to get to 147, or not to 147, but to 140 when he was supposed to fight Devin Haney. And he's thick at 147. There's no need for him to drop another few pounds. He can fight anybody. Shakur is a great champion and he's a hell of a fighter also. But he doesn't have the same kind of economic muscle that Ryan has. So when you're in that position and you're negotiating, the guy that can kind of dictate things is usually the guy that's the A side in terms of the star power. In terms of the talent, Shakur is the A side. So if it's 144 or bust, I just have a hard time seeing Ryan agreeing to that. But if he does, it's a big time fight. But there's also out there, certainly it will be a big deal if he does fight a Devin Haney in a rematch. Now that would be a unification fight at this point also, as same. Shakur would not be unification because he's at 140. If he fights Devin Haney, it's a unification fight. Obviously there's a lot of history with what happened in the no contest with the positive drug test and all the post fight back and forth between those guys. There's also the possibility, I don't think it's next, but you know what? I wouldn't count out the possibility of what would be a gigantic fight would be him against Conor Benn at some point.
You knew I was going to go there because Conor Benn was there ringside as well. Sure. And I think Ryan's a free agent as well. Is he not after this one? Well,
that's going to be a dispute and a debate we're going to see. Now, there was a lot of discussion in the post-fight and some social media posts about how, everything is copacetic between him and Oscar, and they were hugging it out at the press conference. And obviously Oscar was happy he won and Ryan was happy he won. And, it's all lovey-dovey. And that's typically the way it goes when the fight's over. But when it gets down to brass tacks of, okay, what are we doing next? They claim, Golden Boy, that Ryan is still under contract for whatever, multiple fights or multiple years. The Ryan Garcia team says, no, this was our last fight. So somebody's right and somebody's wrong. So if they can't come to whatever the agreement is or a settlement, there'll be a court battle. Now, I don't know this because I don't have a copy of his contract, but my experience says it seems to me that Ryan, unless there's been an agreement that's been signed or whatever documented besides that, it would strike me that he probably still is under contract for a period of time. And I say that, again, my opinion is because most of the time in boxing contracts, when a fighter is sidelined, either an injury or a suspension or some other reason, the contract stops and you don't have to, that time doesn't count against your contract. So keep in mind, Ryan was suspended for a year by the New York State Athletic Commission while he was under contract to Golden Boy. So it would strike me that they are going to stop the contract during the suspension and that time would still belong to Golden Boy, which would certainly be enough for his next fight. How the Ryan Garcia camp will approach that, I'm not sure. But again, I'm not a lawyer, but I've seen enough contracts in boxing and seen enough of these types of activities where, and the suspension could have just been as well as I'm out for, a year because I have like a shoulder injury. The contract typically is halted. And when you come back, the time picks up again. So, but we'll wait and see. I mean, the guy just fought on Saturday. we'll see what they have to say about it. But right now, you got one side saying he's under contract, the other side saying we're not, and you know what that means? The lawyers are going to get paid.
Well, the lawyers always get paid, do they not? No matter what they do. Man, look, what if it's a criminal defense lawyer or I don't know, a corporation lawyer? I don't know,
And
man.
this ain't Golden Boy's first rodeo with a lawsuit with one of their fighters. I mean, they're
Oh,
dealing with the same thing right now with Virgil Ortiz. They went through a lengthy problem with Canelo Alvarez. We saw that they obviously didn't win that particular case. So uh, lawsuits in boxing are as common as knockouts.
well, there you go. Can Conor Benn become a world champion? Now, when you look at the world champions right now, we've got Brian Garcia, we've got Will Romero, we've got
Devin
Devin
Haney.
Haney, and then we've got Lewis Crockett here in the UK, who Liam Parrow looks like he's going to be facing enemy. But when you look at Conor Benn and everything that he brings to the division, can he beat a Devin Haney? Can he beat a Garcia? Or can he beat a Rolling Romero?
I would think that Conor would probably be the underdog to most of those guys. Can he win? I mean, look, he won a significant fight at middleweight. So if he has not, if he doesn't have a lot of issues getting back down to welterweight, I would think he could certainly compete with those guys. I'm not sure he can match a Ryan Garcia for the speed and the power. I don't think he has the boxing skills of a Devin Haney, who's got maybe the best boxing skills among the guys who have the titles. Uh, you know, Crocker is not that big of a name. I don't think that he would necessarily look for that fight. And like you said, Crocker's already occupied with the mandatory he has to do coming up against Liam Parr, where he's going to be on the road traveling to Australia. Romero doesn't have an opponent at the moment. I mean, Rolly is a beatable guy. I mean, he's good, but he's just basic. And I say basic, I don't mean that negatively. I just mean it's not a lot to look at in terms of trying to figure out, the trickiness or the speed or this. Rolly's a good puncher, but he's a again, when I say basic, I mean right hand, left, left jab, right hand. It's textbook boxing if you're going to try to, come up with a game plan against it. You just got to make sure you don't get clipped with the big punch. But again, Conor Benn showed a really good chin. He took some heavy duty shots against Chris Eubank Jr., who was a much bigger fighter, and he came through that. So I think he should be able to handle those shots as a welterweight. To make a long story short, can he win a world title? Yeah, in the right circumstance, he absolutely can. Can he do it against the current crop? I guess it would obviously depend on the matchup. I would certainly make him, the underdog if Ryan Garcia is in the same kind of mental and physical condition that he was against Mario Barrios. That would be a hard night for Conor Benn, it seems to me. But the thing about it is, Conor keeps telling you that if he wants to be a world champion, it's the WBC belt that he wants. If he's going to get a chance to fight for the WBC welterweight title, it would have to, at this point, it would have to be against Ryan because that's the belt that he has.
That was going to be my sort of question. I thought I didn't know the ins and outs of the contract with Golden Boy with Ryan, but I thought Ryan was a free agent, and in my head I'm thinking ZUFFA straight in, grab Ryan Garcia, and then make that fight between Conor Benn and Ryan Garcia. But I didn't know the whole full story of the contract with Golden Boy. I just thought he was.
Well, it's not really a full story. It's just in boxing, it's like anything. If you're on the shelf, usually the contract stops. When you're back, then it picks up. So it would seem logical to think that Golden Boy still has a little more time with Ryan. Now, again, I don't know that for sure. That's just my conjecture, but it's based on the experience of having covered plenty of contracts in the sport of boxing.
Mm.
But either way, whoever the promoters are, like if the fighters want it and it makes sense for everybody, these fights will happen.
I agree. I totally agree, Dan. Now, you've always got your ears to the ground. Who's next for ZUFFA? Who are they signing next? They've got Jaya Pataya, which was a shock in itself, and I suppose they've got Conor Benn. Give me another name. Give me a name that you think they might make a play for. Do you have one? Do you think they'll make a play for another name, a big name?
Well, they're definitely talking to a lot of different people. That's 100%. I don't know if it's been like actually officially announced, but it's pretty common knowledge, at least if you have your ear to the ground. They're going to sign Andy Ruiz, the former heavyweight champion. He's coming to ZUFFA, no doubt about it. And pretty much as guys become free agents, they'll talk to different people. They've been beating the bushes, talking to a lot of different people at all different levels too. Some of them are the prospect types. Some of them are the young contenders. Some of them are the championship level guys like an Opataya. Some of the current promoters who are struggling because they don't have broadcast deals or they have limited availability to do these events, like a Top Rank, like a PBC, etc. When those fighters can't get fights and ultimately Top Rank or whoever, a Golden Boy, if they don't renew with DAZN or a PBC, if they end up releasing certain fighters and they become available, then ZUFFA, may have a conversation with them. Now, these are not big names, but I'll give you an example. So Top Rank, which has obviously been struggling because they haven't had a contract with the broadcaster since the end of July when their ESPN deal ran out, has a lot of good talent in their roster. They had a kid, 130-pound, undefeated, rising contender, ranked in the various organizations, I believe, named Andres Cortez from Las Vegas. They built him up a lot. I think he's like 23-0. He's a pretty good young fighter. Got a chance to, win a title, and certainly at 130 pounds, which is not like the deepest division. When his contract was up, they just had nothing to offer him. They didn't, so he went about his way, and he ended up signing with ZUFFA. That's a great signing. Now, is he an elite pound-for-pound guy? Does he come with the name recognition of an Opataya? No, but you know what? He's a perfect guy for them because he's good. He has some fans. He has a great record. You don't have to put 23 fights into him because that's already been done by others. And, he's ready to be involved in fights against, quality opponents. There's another fighter that Top Rank released because, again, they just didn't have anything for him. So there's a fighter named Odabek Komatov. He had a phenomenal fight against Raymond Ford. They fought for one of the vacant featherweight titles. In that fight, Odabek suffered a bad knee injury, had surgery, was on the shelf for a while. He was still with Top Rank. They brought him back. They paid for a fight to have him fight at home in Uzbekistan in like an 8-rounder. He got a win. And again, they had nothing to give him. They had no opportunities for him, and they ended up giving him his release. Guess what? He signed with ZUFFA. Tremendous talent, really good fighter. I mean, I saw him. He fought on a card in the UK. I saw him on like a little small pay-per-view. I'm like, this kid can really fucking fight.
Was it Patrick Ward he beat? Was it Patrick?
Yeah,
Ward?
exactly. Martin Ward. Exactly.
Martin Ward. Yeah.
Yep. So that's another guy. Again, is he a big name? No, but is he a championship level quality? To use your words, a quality operator? Absolutely. So for all the names and championship guys that ZUFFA will go after and sign an Opataya or a Conor Benn, you also have to build up, some guys that aren't maybe at that level in terms of name recognition, but you want quality talent that can be involved in fights, that can not just be a club fighter. These are really quality professionals, and they're loading up on those guys too. And that's just two examples. Other companies are going to have to end up releasing guys as well if they can't get TV deals. It's hard you can't just keep farming your guys out and paying for their fights thousands and thousands of dollars if you've got no revenue coming in. So ZUFFA is going to be there to have probably their pick of the litter of guys that become free agents. So the question was, are they going to continue signing guys? The answer is yes. Do I know exactly who? No, but they're definitely going to talk to everybody. And they're going to have a chance to really, get a premium type stable and do so it's not going to take them a long time to stock up.
Well, I didn't know that about those two fighters there, and it seems like they are.
Well, if you don't know about them, you've not been reading my Substack.
Well, there you go, Bill.
You need to be reading your Fight Freaks Unite, brother.
There we go. And where can they find you? What have you got on? What have you got on the cards? I know you're a busy man and you do interviews and stuff like that, but tell people what have you got lined up for this week?
Well, this week I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to unfold in Arizona. I'll do something ahead of time on that great fight between Navarrete and Nunez. Will be a unification fight in the 130-pound division. I have on the schedule. I'll do later today, and they can check it out on our podcast sometime in the next couple episodes. I'm going to talk to Jai Opataya, who's in Las Vegas getting ready for his title defense against Brandon Glanton. That's going to headline the March 8th ZUFFA boxing card. And I'm really excited about that because although I have communicated with Jai in direct messaging, I've never interviewed him. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation with him.
He's a good interview. He's like a Mike Tyson, just says it straight down the middle. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't try and swerve anything. He'll just tell you straight. And I like that about Jai.
I like that.
And that you'll get a straight answer. Yeah, everything they need to find you is going to be in the description box. All the links to your Substack, to Fight Fans Unite. Was it your podcast?
Fight Freaks Unite.
Fight Freaks Unite. Fight Freaks Unite. Your YouTube channel, the podcast link is going to be at the bottom of this as well. And yeah, look out for that Jai Opataya interview. That'll be when did you say that would be? When's that going to get released? Next couple of shows, you said.
I will have to go over with my partner, figure out which show we're going to slot it on, but it'll be in the next couple of shows. He's fighting March 8th, so it's not like it's going to be too long. Maybe we'll run it this weekend.
Perfect. Okay, there you go. You'll find it. Dan, as always, I always appreciate your time. Thank you so much for doing this for IFLTV. Keep working hard, man. I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate it. You gave me 25 minutes again. You gave me a long time, so I do appreciate it. Dan, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.
All right, Andrew. Thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.